In this video, I'm going to be sharing you the most important tips in getting you started buying your first buy-to-let UK property. They say that starting is the hardest part. It took me a couple of years before I was able to get my first property. Going from 0 to 1 is probably the hardest thing you could do. But helping you with this is one of my goals. So what we want to do is make sure that you've got the accurate information you need to invest in UK property today. So if you want to learn from my mistakes and the lessons that I've learned along the way, keep watching the video. We are deep diving into the rest of these tips. So make sure to hit the like button, comment below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification bell. Tip number 1 is, what are your goals? Is it financial security? Is it cash flow? Is it capital growth? Do you want to place the income from your job? Whatever it is, you need to start with the end in mind. And the way to do this is using SMART goals. That means specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based goals. All of these aspects of setting your goals are going to be crucial for you in the long term. The second tip is, what is your why? This relates to the relevancy part of the SMART goal. You need to understand what it is that you're doing. You need to understand the reasons you're doing it, and you need to understand the long-term values that you have as a person. The trick I found was to ask that question 7 times. Understand what it is you want, and then see why you really want it. So ask 7 whys. Why do I want to be in property? Then you could have that answer. Well, based on that answer, ask why again, and then you get another answer. Then ask that question again, and then you get another answer, all the way to the deep-rooted reasons as to why you're doing this. This is the thing that's going to keep you motivated for the long term. When the times are hard, that's what's going to keep you going through it. So if you understand that, you understand the deep reason as to why you were doing this in the first place, this is going to be the best thing to keep you going for the long term. Tip number 3 is to assess your resources. Have you got a pot of cash currently? Are you currently in debt? Have you got other funds that you could use that may be not enough to buy a buy-to-let mortgage? Have you got more than enough? And you could look at buy, refurbish, refinance strategy, purchasing all of the property for cash and then having money for renovations and taking the money back out. All of those things need to be assessed because the resources that you have, including time and energy, dictate what kind of strategy you can do, how quickly you can grow your portfolio. Every single aspect like this really does need to be considered. So if you've got 25% for the mortgage to put down, then that could be your first thing that you could do. But then you need to think about, have I got enough money for the legals? Have I got enough money for the stamp duty? Have I got enough money for the renovation? All of these things need to be factored in, not just the purchase price. Now, what I want you to do is sit down and really put down on paper what it is that you've got access to. Time, money, energy, all of those things. They're really important resources that you need to understand, and they're going to be crucial in understanding what you can do going forward. I'll give you the perfect example. So for myself, at the time, I had the money to purchase our first buy-to-let property, but I had to use it with other people. So what we did is, to extend our funds further, we joint pooled our effort and put our money together to buy the first property. That was the first thing that we did. And then we had to look at pulling the money back out. Now, that takes up to 6 months. So what you would do is you'd use the buy, refurbish, refinance strategy, and it takes about 6 months or so to get the money back out after you've renovated the property. But in that time, more deals came up. So in order to us to snowball our efforts and make sure that we were buying as much property as possible, I had the skills, luckily enough, that I could go and then lend money from other people. And lending money from other people is another strategy. I had a little bit of funds left, and I used that money then to purchase the next property shortly after that one. Well, that is the kind of strategy I was using. I was giving fixed percentage returns back to the investor, each one that we were lending to. That was the other way of making sure that I accelerate my property portfolio as quickly as possible. So that could be a strategy for you if you don't have as much money. It might not be that you have enough for the deposit. It might not be that you have no money at all. You need to structure the deal and structure it so that other people are going to lend you money. If it's bridging finance, if it's from other people, you just really need to understand the structure behind the deal, and that's what's going to help you move forward. So this brings us on to tip number 4. Once you've assessed your goals, your why, and your resources, you can now assess your strategy. What kind of strategy is going to fit for you based on all of those things that we've just talked about? Now, for me, it was a buy, refurbish, refinance strategy. But for you, it could be the vanilla buy-to-let. If you've got 25% for the mortgage, then you might want to just put that money into there and a bit extra to get it up to standard, maybe just a bit of renovation, and you've got the legal and the stamp duty cost. But that might not be the way that you want to do it. You might want to really accelerate your portfolio and use that buy, refurbish, refinance strategy that I talked about, because that allows you to pull the money out in 6 months. Whereas opposed to if you're doing the vanilla buy-to-let strategy, that could lock up the money for 2 years. Or if you do it, you could have an early repayment charge, which might not make sense to pull the money out before that time. But that's all in the clause of the mortgage. And obviously, I'm not a mortgage broker, so please do talk to your broker to understand the implications of this. But you need to factor all of those kind of things in. It might be that the strategy that you need to implement then is that you've got to look at getting other people's money. Like I said before, that can be a really important thing once you've got the skills and the energy. That's the time and the energy, more importantly, to put in and make sure that you can structure the deal and they will lend you the money based on that. Obviously, you've got to build a lot of trust, rapport, and that takes time. For somebody to really understand why they should be lending you the money in the first place, and if you've never done it before, you might not have the credibility there, which also could be a worrying factor for the person investing, but also yourself. So I talk a bit more about how you can get over these kind of things in other videos, and more videos to come in. So furthermore, then you might want to look at basically what your goals are. Now, I said about goals and really assessing those, but that also fits really well into strategy. Now, if I'm going for cash flow, I might look at buying multiple properties. This is going to be a thing about growing your portfolio. But then you might want to assess how quickly you want to do it. How quickly you're going to do that depends on the strategy as well. If you want to do it in the simple terms, like we talked about in the vanilla buy-to-let, it's going to take longer. If you do the buy, refurbish, refinance strategy, it's going to be quicker, but there's a lot of time and energy and effort put in because you've got to go and renovate the property. It could be that you look at purchasing blocks of flats, maybe 3 flats, where you get good cash flow. Or you could buy lots of smaller properties or less priced properties then, say, and use those. But then you've got to factor other things in, like I'm going to manage more tenants. Whereas if you could look at HMO, then you've got all the tenants in one place. It might be easier to manage. It might not be, after experience I've had with friends who've had HMOs, but that might not be the strategy for you. So you need to really think about all of these different factors when it comes into your strategy, how you're going to deploy your money, time and effort into the thing that's going to work best for you. Now that you've assessed your strategy, we move on to tip number 5, your location. The location that fits your strategy, more importantly. Now, where you're investing is very, very crucial, because this is going to dictate how much money you need to put into the deal. Now, if you were looking at it and you might want to invest right on your doorstep, but if you live in London and the prices are so high, you might not get the yields that you want. And it might be that it's going to take you forever to save up the type of money to purchase one of those properties. You might then think, I'm going to purchase further afield, maybe South Wales or up north, the north of England. Well, then comes other factors. You need to think then about the time that it's going to take to get to the place. You've got to think about the resources. Who do I know in the area? If you don't know anybody, how do you get to know the people in the area? All of these really be understood before you start investing in a particular place. Assessment and due diligence are really crucial before you make that decision. Picking a location is much like picking stocks. You can either get yourself a cash flowing asset that pays you for years and years and years, or you could buy an absolute dud. If you don't understand the fundamentals of investing in the property area in the first place, then that can be the thing that can be detrimental to your whole investment journey. And one bad property can knock you off the game completely. I'm not saying that it will, but I'm just saying that you need to do your due diligence, understand the area, and make sure there's a multifaceted area. What I'm looking for is a place that has got good transport links, has got employability, not just one employer, not just 2 employers, but multiple employers that are going to hold that economy up for years to come. The other thing is, I'm looking at the development, the future development of the area, not just 5, 10, but 30 years away. Is this still going to be a good area to invest in? Because when you're buying mortgage products for the long term, they're over like 25, 30 years. So Is this still going to be a good investment area when you come to the end of the term of that mortgage? The other thing you look at is the schools. Is it a good area for education? Are there good schools there? Is there good links to those schools? All of those things need to be factored in order to understand what kind of area you're buying in. If you've got all of those things and it seems like a good place that you need to invest in, then go for it. I'd say that those kind of crucial aspects are more important than anything else. The links to the area is as to why we invest in where we do is because they're close to Cardiff. Cardiff is a multifaceted area in itself, but the prices for us, we feel a lot of the properties are too much. So we look outside of that area with good transport links that can get us easy access into the capital city and easy access to the M4. M4 taking just 3 hours away from London. So when we think about that, we look at easy access, making sure that it's got good motorway links, it's not out in the sticks. You've got places like Aberdeen in Scotland, which are actually, the prices are going down. This is not something you want when all the prices around you are going up. It doesn't really make sense to invest in an area like that. So assess those areas, see which ones are growing, see which ones have the future potential of growth as well, not only just now, but in the future, to ensure that you're locking in your investment for the long term. Tip number 6, who do you need in your team to make it happen? Now, the old saying goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And property is definitely a long distance game. So when you're thinking about it, who do you need in your team is a very crucial part of the puzzle. Now, when I think about it, I think of the solicitor, I think of the mortgage broker, I think of the contractors that you're going to use. There's lots of different contractors out there, and it's hard to find good ones. It's hard to find good any of these things in property. And don't just go with the recommendations that you hear online, okay? Really, you want to vet those people, even if they have got good recommendations, because there's kind of this thing where just because somebody else says it, everybody says them, just because they got a brand, that doesn't mean that they're going to be the best person for the job. So you want to build some sort of connection with these people, understand if they're going to be trustworthy. That's the most important thing. Once you've got a good connection, there's the type of people you can use over and over and over again, and they're going to be reliable and they're going to put you at the top of the pack. And I feel like that with most of the people that I deal with are really good friends at the same time as being the people that I need in my team to make sure that we're getting our properties over the line quickly, efficiently, and making our investment strategy the easiest it can be without putting too many hurdles in the way. That's not what you want. A lot of these things like solicitor, I know I've mentioned this loads of times, but solicitor, if that messes up, it can ruin the deal. The broker, if you have a bad broker, they could tell you information that doesn't really fit for your personal circumstances, and then that could end up costing you a lot of money. If you've got a contractor that doesn't work well with you, and it could be that they're not even competent in the first place, that can cost you lots of money. Probably more money than all of the others put together if the contractor goes wrong. It's happened to us. So when you think about that, understand what are the things that you're going to need in order to have the moving parts of your investment journey. Once you've got those, lock them in, treat them well, and you can go for the long distance. And tip number 7, don't overextend yourself. Now, this can be the thing that hits you hardest, is when you overextend yourself. Okay, you're excited, I'm going to buy my first property. But then you think about it, you haven't established the fundamentals yet. You haven't got a solid foundation. So you think, oh, I'm going to do my first project and I'm going to take on this massive renovation. It's not the kind of thing that you want to go into first. I wouldn't say that it was a good idea. If you go back to my first buy-to-let video, I did our first buy-to-let, which we purchased. There was a small renovation, but there was a bit of structural work. And that could have completely wiped out the deal. We were so lucky in that regard. And it wasn't anybody's fault. We had surveys, everything like that. All of that was done. But things can still go wrong, and this is property. So you just need to understand that things can go wrong. So if you're looking at it, you want to look at it as, I want to do this as easy as possible, my first one. Understand the mechanics, understand what's going on, build a foundation. Once you build that foundation, you can keep going on and build upon it. And really, the first one is just to really understand it. It's instead of taking a course on property, this is your course. You're getting a crash course in property investment by doing it. And that's the way that I would suggest is to go in, but make sure that you're doing it on a level that is something you can do and achieve, not something you're going to overextend yourself with. Tip number 8, establish how you were going to get the properties in the first place. Now, most people would think, I'm going to head over to Rightmove, have a little tap in, go for an area that I've chose, and just look for the cheapest property. Well, those things are what typically everybody is doing, and that's why it's so hard. If you're going to look for a property, you want to make sure that, one, you really understand the area, because it's better to just know not just the lowest prices and go for the cheapest thing in the bargain basement. Understand when a property is genuinely cheap, not just artificially cheap. Well, not artificially, but cheap in the sense of just because it's cheap, right? So it's just cheap. Just because a property is cheap doesn't mean anything. You want to look at those ones that are below market value ultimately. Understand what's below market value and something that's going to be a good investment. Not just because it's below market value, because it's got all of these things wrong with it. And then when you've done the work, it's just a normal market value. That's not what you want. That's not what you want at all. You want to know if you're going to buy a below market value property that you're going to do a bit of work to, and it's going to get up to that market value, and you are going to be winning. That's where you want to be. That's the ideal sweet spot for choosing the right property investment. But then, as I said, it's loads of people competing for those properties even then. I've been to properties and we've put in offers, and they've had like 10 offers for the same property, and the agents know this and they're playing the game. They want you to outbid each other. None of these properties are even making sense in the current market to bid on, and even if you did, you were going to be paying over the odds for the property. We're looking for properties with below market value ultimately, because at least we know we're safe. If you purchase a property at market value, the property dips in value, and then you're in negative equity. So what do you do then? Not something you want to go for. Making sure that you buy right at the start, locking in that profit that you've got already, and then moving on and working on that. Not buying at the market value, because everybody can do that. So establishing how you're going to do it. Are you going to use your own marketing channels to find direct to vendor leads? Or are you going to use a sourcer? So if you're looking at direct to vendor and you're going to do it yourself, that's great. But you need to assess your resources. Are you looking at how much time, energy, money have you got to put into it? Is it going to take time to learn online marketing? Are you going to take the time then to go and find someone if you can't? And then think of the capital, extra capital that's going to cost you to go and hire somebody else to do it. I'm not saying this is a bad idea. What I'm saying is you need to understand the resources that you need to put in and quantify for that. If you're going to use a sourcer, make sure you're diligent. Understand not just because they're giving you a property in front of you and saying this is a good deal. Great, you can trust in that it's going to be a good deal, but never, ever, ever don't do your due diligence. Due diligence is so crucial. I trust people to an extent, but I'll always do my due diligence. And I've been bit more times when I don't do that than when I have, and overly cautious is the game of this. But I know that you've got to act fast in a lot of these cases, but being too slow is something you've got to also think about. So when you work with someone like a sourcer, getting that first property and making sure that's all right, that's the most important part. Making sure you get that first property with them, you build up the trust, and then you can move on upon there. In our company, that's what we do. A lot of the times we work with the investor to get to really know them, understand their goals, build up the trust, show them other properties that we've done, and they can build up the confidence, showing them other projects that we've done as well. They build up the confidence in us, and they can make a decision quickly. They're things that you've got to think about. Even when I talk about going on the market, you've got to be quicker than everybody else. The speed to the property deal is the most important thing. So assess your resources, assess how you're going to get the leads, and more importantly, assess how you're going to compete for those leads to make sure you're the one who's winning. Tip number 9, make sure that you're actually making profit. Now, this might even sound like a joke, but genuinely, making sure you're making profit is the name of the game. If you don't have the coverage for the mortgage, this is the most important part, right? So if you've got a buy-to-let mortgage, you've paid over the odds, and then you're not charging enough for rent, and if you haven't got 140%, up to 140% then say, coverage of the mortgage, then you might not even get that mortgage in the first place. Where does that leave you? Without a property, or you've made a serious misjudgment in error. If you buy, refurbish, refinance, you purchase cash and you go to refinance, and this totally messes up the deal and you're stuck with a property. This brings me on to tip number 10. Have multiple options. Now, what I mean by that is when you purchase a property, have multiple options for what you're going to do at the end. You can buy to let and rent it out. You can flip the property. You can look at other options. Maybe you look at more exotic strategies and look for serviced accommodation to maximize the rental. All of those kind of things you need to understand. And I'll give you a perfect example of something that happened to myself. So we had a property that we were considering to flip. Now, I was iffy on whether I was going to flip it or not, but I had two options here and I had my strategies available. So I decided to put it on the market, see what we could potentially get. It was a buy, refurbish, refinance strategy, so I had 6 months before I had to start then looking at a mortgage option. So I thought, well, okay, in this period, I'm gonna put it up on the market, put it on for probably more than it was worth, and this is where I got hit, right? So I put it on for more than it was worth, and I waited around to see if there was any offers or anything. There wasn't. I mean, I knew that it was more expensive than it should have been, okay? So I did it because I knew that my backup option was to rent it out, which ultimately is really what I wanted to do. So I then had another option for the property, which was to buy, refurbish, refinance, and let it out. Now, that is the option that we've gone for currently, but I had another option there, I had another exit. If you think about it the other way, say that you'd bought the property and you'd done it and you paid cash, and then say you run into some issues and the renovation was going to cost more. Say that you were going to add an extension onto it and they would cost more, and you didn't, or you had like some sort of planning that you needed to go through and the planning didn't go through. What would be your option? Would it still work as a rental, or did you need that extension to make that whole deal work? Did you need it in order to get the flip value that you needed to get that extension? Is there something there that you needed to do? Do you need to title split the property, turn it into two, and you didn't get the planning? So when you think about it, just understand that you need multiple options, understand what your options are, so that you're never caught out and you've got an exit for whatever eventuality happens. This is the thing that helps you keep ahead of the game. So now we are on to tip number 11, and I wish I knew this before I went into property investing, and is that no amount of training will prepare you for investing in property. Now, you could hear all of the gurus slowly crying as I say this, but really, you can't understand the concepts behind investing in property until you've done it. It's like when you're in the Matrix and then everything starts to make sense when you're actually step behind it and you start seeing all the pieces, or you feel like that scene in Limitless where everything just is floating around all the numbers. It's kind of like that, right? Where you start to really understand things once you're actually doing it. And this is where you really need to understand about potential aspects of falling into a trap. You can fall into the trap that you're going to invest tens of thousands of pounds to invest in a property course that's going to make you a millionaire overnight, right? Not so much. That isn't the thing that's going to happen, okay? And in most of the cases, the people who are successful have got some sort of background there that is helping them get to where they're going to get quicker than anybody else, right? There is weighted advantage behind it, and it must be the experiences that other person had or something there that you might not have done. So another thing, don't compare yourself to other people as well. This is another just bonus thing that I want to say. Don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare yourself to others on social media or anything like that, because you do not know what has gone behind them getting to where they are. You do not own all the comparables. You don't know if they've got a rich uncle that's left them millions of pounds. They ain't going to tell you that. So you don't know all these kind of things. Just understand, I'm in my lane. I'm in my lane. I'm going this way. I don't need to think about anything else. I just need to work on my own path and carve that own path for myself. Now, when I say that this is conceptual, and it really is, just think about it. If I told you about editing and I said, okay, in order to edit, you need 2 levels of clips, and you're going to overlay that clip, and then we're going to cut it and we're going to put B-roll into it. If you never edited and you say we're going to do this on Premiere Pro, you wouldn't have a clue how to do that. But because it's all conceptual, right? It's all understanding all these technical terms and they're just going right over your head, most cases, right? That is what property investing is like. If you go to a property training course or whatever it is, it starts to really like grind you because you're thinking, oh well, I've never done this before, and you're getting all this information chucked at you. It's really, really hard to understand this stuff. So I'd say the best education you can get is to invest that in a property. Invest in the property, and sometimes it can be cheaper than the course. So when you think about it, invest in the property, get understanding, or I would say network, get with other people who understand it. You learn from first-hand experience. Use resources like this. Get on YouTube videos, read books. Less is a lot less. All of those things can help you get the bare fundamentals that you need, but you get your real experience and you get your real understanding of the whole property investment once you start really doing it. Now we come to tip number 12. Shift your mindset. And I would wholeheartedly say this is probably the hardest thing to do in any journey that comes to property investment or anything. When it's a big goal that you've got, a big massive goal, once you assess those SMART goals and everything like that, it all comes down to the mindset. Now, I would say personally that was the hardest thing for me, and I think it's the hardest thing for all the other people I've talked to, is the mindset behind it and shifting your mindset to be able to do it in the first place. One, it's a lot of money, right? It is a lot of money. So you're gonna have a lot of doubt in understanding your capability. You're gonna doubt yourself. You're gonna doubt the investments. You're gonna doubt everything. That is probably the thing that's gonna cripple you, and it's gonna take you to the point where you don't take any action at all. That can happen. But what you will need to do is shift your mindset and understand it's something you can do, it's something that's achievable and it's been done by people before. Now, many people have heard of Roger Bannister, and he broke the first, I think it was like 4-minute mile or something like that, right? Once that happened, more and more people were able to do it. Property investing has been around a lot longer than that, and you know that other people have done it, right? So you know that it is achievable, it's something you can do, and you just need a bit of help. You need to understand what it is that's going to take to get there, and most of the cases it's really having that helping hand, having the team around you like I mentioned before. Once you've got those kind of people around you that can support you and really make you understand the realization that you can do it, then you can really start accelerating your property journey. But until then, until you get over the fears, the doubts, and all of everything in between, and all those mindset barriers, you're never going to be able to invest in property. No matter how much training you pay for, no matter any kind of aspect around it, you're not going to be able to do it. So make sure that you get your mindset right, work on your mindset, understand it from people who have done it, and really get to start asking questions, like on videos like this. Make sure you're asking questions. If you don't understand something, ask, because that is how you're going to learn. This brings us to tip number 13, unlucky for some, and I would say this can be unlucky for some, finding good tenants. If you're going to find a good tenant, you could do absolutely everything right to this point. But if you don't find good tenants, it can ruin your deal completely. Now, making sure that you're very diligent in this regard is so important. You want to make sure that you're doing things like credit checks, you're doing real understanding, real deep digging. I'd even check if they're on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is. Type in the name, see what kind of stuff they're posting. Do they fit with your ethos? Are they the right kind of people that you want in your property? Don't forget, these people are going to be either breaking your asset down and devaluing it, or they're going to be there to look after it and make sure that it's going to be there for years to come. So it's really crucial that you make sure you make the right decision at this point. I would always make sure that you're vetting them correctly and making sure that you've got the right tenant in place who is going to look after the property. Because if you fail at the last hurdle, and this really truly is the last hurdle, if you don't get the right tenants, that can really affect the whole game, and it can wipe out your rental for a year. In some cases, I've heard so many cases of terrible tenants that have really messed things up, and the investment has absolutely gone to pot, and it's ended up costing them even more money. So you don't want to be put in that predicament. Making sure that you get the right tenants, putting a bit of the effort and time into making sure that you got the right ones is so important. And please do make sure that you do this. I hope that you have found these tips helpful. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. I know, I said that this helps a lot, but believe me, it helps more than you'll ever know. You can comment below and let me know what tip helped you the most, or if you've got any other questions, please put them in the comments. And one thing that I think will help a lot is I've shared my experience of my first buy-to-let property.